A few weeks back, a professional skateboarder was scrolling through social media when he came across an old photograph that blew him away.
It just oozes style.
The photo was taken in Fayetteville, North Carolina in the 1970s. In the shot, a 10-year-old girl skateboards down a street, holding up an umbrella as she rolls toward the camera. It's a beautiful image, but one thing in particular stood out to him.
Honestly, her sense of confidence and ease.
Now, I don't know a lot about skateboarding, but that look on her face, her poised stance, it's striking. So it doesn't surprise me that this photo would grab the attention of a pro skater. But this guy is the most famous skateboarder in the world, and he was dying to know who she was.
I reposted it and I just thought it was very cool, and next thing I know, it kind of caught wildfire.
No shocker there. Tony Hawk has more than 9 million followers on Instagram. He's an icon, one of the most accomplished athletes of all time, and he helped put skateboarding on the map in the 80s and 90s. But back in the late 70s,
there wasn't a lot of Black representation in skateboarding. There wasn't much women representation in skateboarding, and this, checks all those boxes.
So, who is the mystery girl in the photo? I'm Anissa Khalifa. This is The Broadside, where we tell stories from our home at the crossroads of the South. This week, we go on a hunt to find Tony Hawk's new favorite skater and find out why this decades-old snapshot was so ahead of its time.
My name is Jeremy Markovich, and I am the writer of the North Carolina Rabbit Hole newsletter.
Jeremy's work pays special attention to the state's lost history and quirky culture. Unlike us here at The Broadside, he loves a good mystery.
There are some mysteries where you're just like, I don't think you can solve this one, right? Like there's some that are really big and broad.
But the one that showed up in his Instagram feed on a recent Saturday afternoon seemed like it was made for him to solve. A challenge from Tony Hawk himself. Who is this skater?
I saw the picture, which I thought was fantastic, and I saw the caption, which said it was from Fayetteville in the 1970s, and I thought to myself, yeah, this is something I could probably figure out. It's like, I feel like a detective, like, oh, I think this is an easy case, potentially for me, if I can get to the right spots. I figured, you know what, somebody's going to figure out this mystery. Why can't it be me?
As you look at this, what stands out to you about this photo? What makes it so special?
So in the picture it's black and white, really high resolution, and it's this young black girl, has pigtails. She's wearing this long coat, and I think it's just like this moment of serenity to me. Like, you have this girl, and she's just very casually skating down her street. It's raining, and she's holding up an umbrella. She has one hand in her pocket, and she's just kind of looking at the camera like, yeah, this is just what I do.
Jeremy had his mission, so he rolled up his sleeves and jumped down the rabbit hole.
So I started looking around, and the furthest back I actually found was on Instagram. An account called blackarchives.co had posted this picture, a collection of images from Fayetteville Observer photographers between 1973 and 1987.
A 15-year range. That didn't exactly narrow things down.
Then I started looking around on the Observer's website, and the picture that was on the website actually had a date on it, January 20th, 1979. So now I have a date. I don't have a location. I don't have a person's name. I don't have a backstory, but now I have a precise date. From there, I went on to some online newspaper archives, but they didn't have the Fayetteville Observer. So I turned to who you turn to in really tough times, a librarian.
Shout out to librarians. They get the job done.
Absolutely. You cannot get it done without librarians who know where to find things and can get them to you, and they're always the most helpful people in the world. And
with the help of an archival expert at the Cumberland County Public Library, Jeremy found the specific newspaper he was looking for.
January 21st, 1979. That is where I found the caption, and that is sort of what unlocked the whole mystery. And the caption says, Shaunda Shane didn't want to get wet, but the idea of spending a Saturday without her skateboard was too much to handle. So she got her umbrella and wheeled down Dinsmore Drive.
So he finally had a name, but there was a slight problem.
Her name is misspelled in the caption. So is it Shonda or is it Shondra? When I came across a Facebook profile, I was like, oh, this has got to be her. And it wasn't hard to figure out. The photo of her in the rain, skateboarding under an umbrella, that was the profile photo. So I was like, this is her.
Jeremy reached out to Shonda over Facebook. She responded, and ding, 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 she confirmed that she was indeed the young girl from the photo.
So I called her up. It was a weird coincidence because like she hadn't really thought about this picture in a long time. And like a neighbor was cleaning out a closet or something and found this picture and was like, hey, that's a really cool picture. Do you want it? And she's like, yeah, cool. And then it ends up on Facebook. And she's like, oh, I just thought it was my own little picture of me. I wouldn't expect anybody to post it online. So it was this weird coincidence where this photo had come back into her life more recently anyway. And she just happened to find it about the same time maybe as Tony Hawk found it. And she thought it was cool. She's like, oh yeah, I know who Tony Hawk is. That's really cool. And she seems like when I talked to her on the phone, just this really like nice, calming presence. Like she seems very zen to talk to, just like she looks very zen in the photo. Like that thing hasn't changed.
Jeremy, you do this all the time. Stories like this are your bread and butter. But this one seems special. What's so special about this story?
This is one of these stories where, to me, sometimes when you see things on social media or you encounter them in the digital world, right? Like sometimes it all can kind of feel a little bit contrived, right? Like you just kind of feel like, oh, this didn't really happen this way, or this situation didn't really, there's more to this story. And if like it's not quite real or there's some kind of angle or whatever. And with this story, it refreshingly didn't feel that way at all. At least in the stories that we often tell or come across, like that feels more and more rare. And so I just love telling this because it was just a nice little story, even though it involves the most famous skateboarder of all time.
So Jeremy succeeded in his quest to locate this mystery skater. But the story doesn't end there. Coming up, Shaunda Shane meets her admirer and fellow skater, Tony Hawk.
Have you ever had the urge to sneak behind the cordoned-off areas of a museum? Or roam the halls after closing time? The Smithsonian's flagship podcast, Side Door, will sneak you behind the scenes of the world's largest museum and research complex. Come learn about the ghosts that supposedly walk the museum halls after dark, how a train robbery gave rise to criminal forensics, why leeches are actually the coolest thing ever, and how to get away with murder in the Arctic. Maybe. You'll discover stories of history, science, art, and culture you won't find in a display case. You can listen to Side Door wherever you get your podcasts, or find us online at si.edu/sidedoor.
When Shaunda Shane heard that a photo of her 10-year-old self was going viral, she almost didn't believe it.
It was a total shock to me, like total.
Shonda still lives in Fayetteville. Today, she works as a patient financial specialist for a local hospital. She's also a mother of 3, and life keeps her pretty busy. But one day, things went a little differently.
Everybody just started calling me and texting me and emailing me and was like, oh my God, Tony Hawk posted your picture on his page. And I'm like, what?
Shonda says it's been fun and kind of surreal seeing her old picture get this level of attention. But throughout this whole saga, she hadn't actually talked to Tony Hawk. That is, until a few days ago.
Hi, Shonda. Nice to meet you. What an honor.
Hi, Tony. Thank you. You too as well.
I think it's so cool that your picture has resonated this many years later. I was so impressed that you look so confident, especially skating on the archaic equipment at the time and in the rain. I mean, if there's one thing I will not do these days is skate in the rain.
I was a daredevil back then.
It appears so.
So how did you come across this photo of Shonda skateboarding in the 70s as a young girl?
It came through a mutual friend, a legendary black skater from the 80s and 90s, Clyde Singleton, posted it on his Instagram feed and just said, this, I think the exact words were something to the effect of, ladies and gentlemen, this is the real GOAT skateboarding photo from 1979 coming out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. And he had reposted it from blackarchives.co. And I thought it was an amazing image and just a formative time in skateboarding, but one that isn't well documented. And so I reposted it and I just thought it was very cool. And next thing I know, it kind of caught wildfire.
Shonda, can you take us back to that day and tell us what were the circumstances of taking the photo?
I do remember I wanted to go outside. I wanted to play. I was with my grandparents because I lived with my grandparents. So at the time I was the only child there. So of course, I had my skateboard. My neighborhood at the time had nothing but hills. It was like hills on every street. And the more I rode, the more I mastered it because trust and believe, once I hit a pebble or a little patch of sand, I would go tumbling off of that skateboard. But I promise you, I mastered it. So on this particular day, I wanted to go outside. I was skating in the rain and I had a newspaper guy that stayed on our block. So as I'm riding in the rain, he came outside and he was like, "Can I take a photo of you? Can you ask your parents, can I take a photo of you?" So I went and asked my grandparents and my grandparents said yes. And that's how the picture came about.
That's so cool. Just on a personal note, I love that you stand with your right foot forward. That's what we call goofy footed. I'm proud to know that Shonda is a fellow goofy footer.
I definitely am.
How long did you skate for?
I skated for years. I had no one to skate with for a long time. In my neighborhood, I was the only girl that had a skateboard. No, I can't even remember at the time that I was skating any boys in my neighborhood that were even skating skateboards like that. But I skated for a couple of years.
You're a pioneer in that sense because there were not many girls skating back then.
No, it wasn't. And all of my girlfriends had roller skates, So yes, I enjoyed my skateboard and I went everywhere with that little pink skateboard.
That's so cool.
How did you pick it up, Shonda? What made you decide to start skateboarding?
My uncle brought me a skateboard. He came home one day and he brought me a skateboard, me and two of my friends. He brought us skateboards. And I think I just learned from then just how to maneuver it. And I'm the type of person, I will watch people, watch people and learn how to do things, from watching people. I've always been that way. And I think I just watched and learned and then practiced and just watched other people.
How does that compare to your growing up and learning how to skateboard, Tony? Where were you in your skateboarding journey in the 70s?
I started around this year that you have this photo. So I was about 10 years old and my older brother was a surfer. So he skated by extension of surfing and he taught me how to ride. And I feel you with the pebbles and the sand, had plenty of those incidents on the way to school, on the way home. But it wasn't until I went to a skate park for the first time that I truly fell in love with it because I saw the possibilities of being airborne. That's what hooked me. And I've been skating ever since.
There's one final twist to this story. After Tony posted the photo and Shonda's phone started to blow up, she got a request from the local newspaper. the Fayetteville Observer, the same paper that originally published Shonda's picture back in 1979. Staff photographer Andrew Kraft wanted to recreate the now famous shot. Shonda jumped at the opportunity, even though it had been a while since she'd stepped on a skateboard.
I wanted to ask you, Shonda, how was it recreating that photo?
It was amazing. It was nerve-wracking because the first picture when I was 10, I was actually rolling, so that's easier. But on the recreation, I had to literally stand still. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this,
It's funny you say that because I can tell from that photo. Well, yeah, I can tell you're standing still, but also that the trucks are kind of loose on that skateboard, and it would have benefited you for them to tighten those trucks. It would have been more stable.
Okay.
That's my hindsight of 2020.
The technical knowledge that no one else would have been able to.
But it was amazing. I wish I could have did a little bit better job, but I was literally just walking in the door from work. He was knocking on ringing my doorbell, and I'm like, okay, I can't even do anything. It's like go time right now.
Wow, that's amazing.
I wanted to ask both of you, why is it so important to preserve these kinds of personal and cultural histories, like photos like this that document specific places and times?
Well, from my perspective, there's an accepted narrative of skateboarding that it was mostly Southern California surf culture that created the movement. And when you see photos like this, that just puts it all to shame because, here's Shonda on her own in North Carolina and skating as if she's been doing it her whole life. And the idea that these photos are, just now coming to light is really, well, it's enlightening. And so I'm thankful that people have preserved these types of images.
Yes. I was just so amazed. Like I said, I do remember the photo, but did I ever think that it would come back around again? Like never in a lifetime. And I think pictures like that am I old enough to call it history? I guess I'm history now. I don't know. Am I history? It's something that I definitely want to say for my grandkids, you know what I'm saying? And they can show their kids, like, look at grandma on a skateboard, you know what I'm saying? So it's really wonderful.
Shonda, are you going to get back on the skateboard now?
Actually, like a month or so before that, my son's skateboard was outside and I just jumped on it. I was like, let me see if I can ride the skateboard still. So I jumped on it and I rode out my driveway into the street and that was about it. That's all I did. But don't test me because I will jump to see.
Well, I'd love to send you one of mine with some tighter trucks so you feel a little more stable.
Yes, I definitely. And then I know where a skate park is now because back then I had absolutely no clue where a skate park was. So.
Oh, there were none. Trust me, I grew up in that era. There were none.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll try anything. I still got that daredevil in me.
This was great. Thank you both so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
I highly recommend checking out the photographs of Shaunda Shane. We have linked to both the original and the recreation from the Fayetteville Observer in our show notes. We also have a link to Jeremy Markovich's work at the North Carolina Rabbit Hole. This episode of The Broadside was produced by Charlie Shelton Ormond. It was edited by Jared Walker. Wilson Sayre is our executive producer. The Broadside is a production of WUNC North Carolina Public Radio and is part of the NPR network. You can email us at broadside@wunc.org. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a rating, a review, or share it with a friend. I'm Anissa Khalifa. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll be back next week.
We could all use a little help navigating the news these days. The Consider This podcast wants to give you a hand. 6 days a week, we'll help you make sense of the day's biggest news story and what it means for you in less than 15 minutes. Listen now to the Consider This podcast from NPR.